with prayer and the pledge. So let's pray. Lord, we come to you today. We thank you for this community that we live in, and we ask you that you would continue to bless this community, bless the leaders of this community, the leaders of our state and our nation, and give them wisdom and guidance and judgment. Ask that you would bless this commission, this leadership team with your wisdom as we do the business of the customers of our utility in our community. We ask that you would always be with our employees as they are out there in the field and the plants working every day. Ask that you would keep them safe in everything they do. We ask that you would bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies, bless those that prepared it, and bless us as we do your work. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
1st of March 2019.
Today we have one service anniversary recognition. We have Mr. Barry Johnson. He is a power plant lab technician. He's been with us for 20 years, started in March of 1999. He came to us from Big Rivers, so he came to us with a lot of good experience. Barry also worked for the city of Owensboro, so he's got time in the system beyond 20 years. Bless his heart. And Barry, one thing about Barry, he and his wife are foster parents, and I think Barry would tell you that's both rewarding and challenging, and I really appreciate that side of Barry. I've worked with Barry out at the plant, and Barry's a very valuable part of our group. So, Barry, if you want to come up, we'll have a little ceremony here. You guys get up. Let's see. Barry in the middle.
Okay. He's like, okay. You can't stand by the way.
Yeah. There you go, Barry.
Yeah, I love that shit.
All right, you want to smile?
No.
I'm not
All right,
telling you.
Thank you very much. All right, appreciate it, Barry. Thank you.
It changed.
All right.
I don't know why I did that.
So, is there any agenda modifications? We'll jump right into the discussion agenda. First thing is the electric rate ordinance. We just concluded our public hearing. I don't know if, JT, if you had anything you wanted to say before we move forward with this?
No, I think that the presentation this morning at the public hearing was very well done, as all the things y'all do. And I think it's very clear, and I'm very happy that we're going to get to lower the citizen bonus for its electric rates going forward.
So we've talked about this at the work session. We've gone over it. We can either go through it page by page, the marked up copy, the red line, or in this case, it's different color lines. Mine's blue line. Or we can go through and I can answer any questions. It's at your pleasure how you guys want to review this ordinance.
Is there any media here that didn't come to the front of the presentation?
I wasn't there, but I was here last time.
Okay, so at the most, you just review the last slide, just pretty much shows what the end result. But we don't have to do that. If she's comfortable with seeing it before, it's the same information we had in the past, so I'm
Okay.
good.
So the bottom line is it's a two-step. We're raising our base rate by overall a total of 4%. Our customer service charge will go up for our residential and commercial classes in 2 steps, and the GSS class, the GSP will go up in 1 step, and the rates will, the KWH rates will go up on June 1 of 19, and then for those classes that have a second customer charge increase, the KWH charge goes down a little bit to keep, basically keep that level. And then that's more than offset by the ECA rate decrease that is on our agenda today, as well as the ECCA rate decrease that will be coming as we begin to exit out of the power market and shut down Elmer Smith Unit 1 in June of 2020 or June of 2019, or Unit 2 in June of 2020. And the overall impact is 5.8% across all of our customer classes of lower bills. I think that's a positive step in the right direction.
I just have one question. I mean, I read through, or tried to grasp all the details of the bond of Ephesians and all those things. And I know the ECA, we linked them to city commission approval of those things. But did we link those Ephesians and those bond changes to the commission approving it? Or is that gonna happen regardless?
The city has to approve.
The city has to prove it.
Oh.
That's probably a good point, that we should probably, when we amend the ECA rate to contingent upon city approval of both of those, the rate, base rate and the bond defeasance. I think that's a good point when we get to that third item. Any other questions on
Any
the
other,
rate?
do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the bond defeasance, again, we've talked about this. This is the first step of the bond defeasance where we were, the actual amount we're targeting, the par value is $3 million, but we set up to $3.5 million to include changes or the cost of doing the defeasance. This will again go to the city commission with the rate ordinance. They go hand in hand, as Tony pointed out. So you have all of the defeasance ordinance and all the attachments. And I started to say I can answer any questions, but what I really meant was Lynn can answer any questions you have. Lynn and Jason.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next one is the third part of our plan, is the ECA rate decrease. So the current ECA rate is .0507 per kWh, dollars per kWh. Our analysis says to take it to .0430, effective June 1st. That's contingent upon city commission approval of the base rate increase and of the first bond defeasance that will be taken to them in April. So I think as Tony pointed out, we may want to amend that motion to include the defeasance as well. You already done it?
No, I'm amending it now. I didn't,
It's got the words in there.
yeah,
Defeasance.
I didn't know if that covered it.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I.
it was already in there.
It's already.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Make a motion. Hang on, let me go back.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I
Aye.
don't know what
It's been upside down most of the time. He's got it right now.
Oh, man.
I'm just watching, see how long it's gonna take.
The next item is our new offering for our internet service, and this is a small business offering. And I'm gonna let Chris, do we have a slide on that?
Yeah, we've got the memo. I figured I would bring up the memo first, get to that. So anyway, I'm very excited to get to this point, to be able to serve a different demographic. We, as discussed in the memo, we have long served commercial customers in this market. However, there's always been a small business demographic that hasn't been a very good fit for our enterprise level services. And so what we propose to the commission is that we begin to offer small business using and leveraging what we've done with fiber to the home, which has been very successful, that type of architecture, that type of deployment. There's a lot of economies to scale with that. And so, Brittany, if you wouldn't mind going to the slide. This is a summary. The next slide has the kind of a summary of what the offering is. So it's really intended for real small business customers who just need basic internet services. They're operating their business. The speeds would be 50 download and 5 upload, and 100 download and 10 upload. Pricing would be $49.99 and $69.99 accordingly, and then a $49.99 installation charge. rather than a very long or a very comprehensive service level agreement and contract that our enterprise level customers have today, this would be a simple 12-month agreement, very similar to what we do with our fiber to the home customers as well. It would not support static IPs. When it comes to service calls, it would be next day. Our enterprise level customers receive 24/7 monitoring and immediate dispatch of services. At this small business level, what we would do is get out there as soon as we can. Normally, next business day. The order process would flow similar to fiber to the home. So really, it is taking what we've learned from fiber to the home and now applying that to small business. And I really do want to emphasize, not going to be available in all areas. So customers that are interested in it, please contact us. We'll open up a service order in our system and then go out and do a site survey to determine, is small business available there? If not, we can always offer them the enterprise level services and work with them to try to meet whatever their needs are. And Brittany, if you wouldn't mind switching to the rate schedule. As part of this, what we propose, or what we'd like to do, is take all of the rates that we have for telecom. We've now consolidated them into a telecommunications rate schedule. We thought that this would be a little bit easier, especially in situations like this where we're making modifications or adding services. So if you scroll down with the highlighted, there you can see that the small business rates, what I had just mentioned, are listed there. So it's a comprehensive document that has all of our rates, monthly recurring charges and non-recurring installation charges all in one spot. So in future meetings, again, if we propose changes to existing services or new services, this will be a good way to communicate that information, because many times, I know, Dr. Maddox, you've asked me, like, well, what is this service? How much is that charged? And I'm not really prepared to present that to you. You'll have that here. It'll give you a bigger picture, a full picture of things. So with that, I guess I'm requesting, any questions?
This will be available in areas that aren't just now served by our fiber to the home.
Correct. This
It'll
is
be
going to
similar
use...
fiber to the home, you say, but it'll be in other areas that aren't right now
Right,
served.
because we offer commercial services throughout the city of Owensboro.
Right.
So we have an existing commercial fiber network that's out there. And so this service is intended to leverage those existing facilities and to be able to put a network access point on some of those areas and be able to serve multiple small business customers. That goes to the economy of scale there. But you're right, as we deploy fiber to the home, that requires us to really put in a much more robust distribution infrastructure to serve all those homes in the neighborhood.
Move for approval.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I would like to say I'm glad to see that we were flexible. As in the last 2 or 3 meetings, we've looked at things to address customer needs and changes as things are going. I think that's a good thing.
Our next item on the discussion agenda is line technician and line crew leader wage adjustment. I'm going to let Tim take you through it, but just when this was brought to me, I wasn't real familiar with the pay scale over there, but I think we have a definite need to make an adjustment here based on the data that we've collected, and I think this is important. And as you see on the as you see on the consent agenda, we have 2 of our newer line techs who have moved on to greener pastures. So we need to, in my opinion, this is something that's needed for us. And Tim can kind of take you through the details.
Yeah, the memo has a good breakdown of everything, but, as you know, it's greatly on our line technician positions to provide customer service and maintain electric system reliability for our customers. The position requires a great deal of skill and technical knowledge. In 2018, OMU started experiencing less than anticipated experience line techs applying for our open positions. The feedback that we've received through the industry was that the market pay for this position had increased. We participated in surveys with Kentucky Municipal Utilities Association in the past, and our HR department worked in association with the survey and gathered results to compare pay and benefits from the organizations that identified it there. The results revealed that the OMU line technicians' pay was the lowest of the organization surveyed, which included 10 municipals and 2 cooperatives. So therefore, to remain competitive in the line technician market, to hopefully retain and attract this talent, I recommend the pay adjustments presented to you for real review to be approved. This time I'll entertain any questions that you might have about this.
So increases you're recommending are about, take us up into the median, if you will, across the board. Do you think that's enough to
Well,
retain the people we've got and to attract, I mean, you're on the basis of your hiring experience?
I'm hoping it will retain, and I'm hoping that it will open up some more avenues to get some experienced employees. Something we'll definitely keep an eye on. I think Michael might follow up the next piece of this, that we might have we might indicate some of the leading indicators on why we're not being able to keep up with that, but it's something we'll have to keep an eye on over the next year. But we're hoping that this move will get us into that position. Move it up much higher, we're gonna have to look at, from a higher structural type position.
Well, just looking at the future, it looks like we're going to be primarily a transmission and distribution type company, not going to be producing as much anymore. It's just quite important that we have these kind of folks.
These are our lifeline on the electric side.
Yeah, when I have employee meetings, I had a coffee hour this morning, this is one of the issues that gets brought up a lot, both obviously by the line techs, and by others who understand this issue. One of the things that our employees are very aware of as we attract new employees is that our historical, we don't pay the most, but we have this really great retirement. With the retirement, the tier 3 is not as robust as certainly it was in the past, and that no longer offsets maybe the fact that we pay a little less. So that's certainly affecting our ability to attract and to retain these folks.
What about fringe benefits? Do we look at that as well as what the other organizations are offering their employees? Are those about the same?
The municipals would definitely be the same on the retirement piece for those that are in the state of Kentucky. Cooperatives, from what I understand, they still have a defined benefit package for their retirement piece.
And we
Health
looked at-
insurance was quite
Pretty
competitive.
comparable.
Jim, explain to me a little bit how this 1 to 5 year training to attain that journeyman status, how does that work?
So essentially, if we were to hire someone off the street without any experience, we would anticipate it to be 5 years before they would be what I would consider journeyman level.
So would we pay for their training and schooling?
If we was to hire someone without any, with zero experience, we would not, the training and the training would be provided by OMU. What we have seen though in the past, we are getting some experienced employees, and they have received training from various line technician schools throughout the state and this region.
So, I mean, we ever considered having like your own apprenticeship program where you would bring people in and their schooling and maybe have a commitment from that lineman for a given period of time for that training?
We have looked at that. That's one topic we would need to discuss, but we would probably have to increase our head count, for that time period. You rise it generally for a 3 to 5 year period, and then it would.
Civil service allow you to do that?
It's in the school, a 6 month, basically full-time, 6 month training.
12 to 6 month training, depending on what kind of training.
So, if when we brought folks in that hadn't had that, the first 6 months, they would be full-time in school, that we would be paying them and paying their schooling, so.
There's labs we would utilize.
Which may be a good cause of benefit if we commit so much time with us, what they pay back.
I don't know about that commitment part with respect.
We'd have to look at that, because it is a general, we have lots of other disciplines that require training. And if it's required training to do that job, the company pays for it. So if we wanted to individualize it into one area of alignment, I think we gotta look at the total picture, but yeah, it's something we can look at.
What is the average age of our linemen? Do you have any idea?
It has come down because we've hired a lot of new individuals over the last years. That's one of the departments that we've seen the highest level of retirement. I would say probably in the mid-30 to lower 40 range.
Yeah,
Do you agree with that?
That's what it says.
I make a motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Next item is in anticipation of budget as we have in years past. We wanted to go ahead and bring to you the general wage increase recommendation and get you to approve that level, so we can finalize that into the budget. And I'm going to let
Michael walk us through that.
And as Kevin stated, each of you know, each fiscal year, OMU must budget for a general wage increase or a general wage table structure movement. And the purpose of putting this on this discussion agenda is so that we can get inputs from the commission, so that we can finalize that fiscal year 20 assumption of what we want to put in there for our general wage increase. So to help facilitate the discussion, created a memo that gave you a little bit of history, some market data, and then an overall recommendation. And basically, if you look at some of the history, I gave you 3 years worth of a fiscal year. 17 and 18, we had a split. We had a general wage increase, base wage increase, but we also had lump sum incentive compensation. So basically, that bucket was broken up into two, one lump sum, and then also put on your base and put on your base. Fiscal year 19, we had just a general wage base increase because we suspended the incentive compensation program. It was recommended by staff that we suspend it. It was approved by the Utility Commission, and that we were going to go back and reevaluate, determine the overall effectiveness of that program. And after evaluation, the OMU leadership does not recommend that that program be reinstated, and it wasn't the best tool for driving the desired behaviors, motivating the employees, and rewarding performance. We also benchmarked several companies, and you just don't see a lot of the lump sum incentive bonus type of programs out there. So, if the commission agrees with that, its assessment that we should not reinstate the incentive compensation program, one of the only ways, or the main tool for the wage structure movement, will be the general wage increase moving forward. So I gave you some market data. Basically, we surveyed some companies, regional companies, and the average of that was about 2.8% for the increases in 2019. We also looked at the Social Security and Supplemental Security Income, or the SSI, which is based off the Consumer Price Index, the urban one, and it was 2.8%, and then we had some national surveys that we look at, and they were around 3%. So I thought, to open the discussion here, that a reasonable range for discussion would be anywhere from 2.8 to 3.2%. That would be a total effect on base payroll, not loaded, of about $560,000 to $640,000. That's the range. So just to let you know that the range that we were talking about, if we choose to stay in that range, was about an $80,000 range.
In this year we're in now, 2.75%.
Yes, we got that in May of last year, right?
Okay.
2018. And we'll get this one in May of 2019. So this is for the budget coming up.
Right.
We just want to know what to put in the budget.
Sure.
And so staff has recommended, and in this memo you see a recommended 3.2%, where you're like, Michael, where do you come up with 3.2%? The 2.8 to 3% is for basic wage inflation. And then the other 0.2 to 0.4, however you want to look at that, is my recommendation to look at the gap analysis that was caused by the incentive compensation program. Anytime you're not adding to the your base pay, but you're giving it a one-time lump sum, you're going to lose against the market over time. That's the chart that you guys have in front of you that you've seen before. And basically, I wanted to show you, it's just from a visual representation, the little blue sliver you see here. That's what we're talking about as far as anywhere from the 2.8 to 3.2. We're not trying to make up all the ground lost by the incentive compensation program, but I am trying to, we are trying to trend in the right direction. So I went with 3.2% in the memo, but at this point, I think we should get inputs from the staff or from the commission and open up the conversation and hopefully agree on what percentage we'd like to put in the fiscal year 20 budget.
Michael, I'm glad to see us doing away with the incentive compensation. I think that was a weak moment for the commission to approve that to start with. We were suspect it was going to be problematic to begin with. We proved it anyway, so I'm glad to see it go away. I will admit that never intended to create the consequences of the gap. When we had split the percentage, I assumed they both went in. I didn't know it was going, being paid as a bonus type thing. So unfortunately, that happened. I think from the increase you're asking for, based on your own data, probably the best number is a 2.8. I don't have a whole lot of credence in the national surveys. I think it's more what this area has. And as far as your calculations on how you came up with the gap, I don't know if I completely buy into that either. If you go back to those years, that what the Social Security and the cost of living in those increases actually were, the the 1.75 was actually pretty close to covering that, so I really don't think it is a 3% gap, but I do acknowledge that there was a gap. So, not to speak for the overall commission, for me, I would be more comfortable with the 2.8 and giving you the 2.2 for the gap for a total of 3.
I can understand that.
I'm more comfortable with that than the 3.2.
And as Michael stated in the memo, for budgeting purposes, 3% is in all the budget numbers that we've done so far, so that fits in with what we assumed, knowing it can move, but we had to put a number in there.
I make a motion we move forward with the 2.8 and the 2/10 for the gap adjustment.
Second.
So that would make it a total of 3?
Three,
Just
yes.
so we understand completely?
During the discussion, I first would like to say that I felt like kicking myself when I realized that I had voted in the past to create this gap. I was very disappointed in myself, not in anybody else, but in myself. And I'm now very happy to go along with the 3, but any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Thank you all. Last thing on the discussion agenda is our community investment report. So Sonia is going to review that. And again, it's linked up to our budget preparation in that at the end, we want to get we haven't historically needed to vote on this unless certainly that's your option, but to get your guidance to make sure that we are including in our fiscal 20 budget the things and at the levels that you guys are comfortable with.
This is, you have a memo that supports this presentation and gives you quite a bit more detail. I just wanted to go over the highlights with you. This is something we do every year. Keep in mind that it is based on a calendar year because of the date of the presentation. When we look at, these are just the dollars. I want to talk about the other side of the coin in a few moments, but sponsorships and donations were right at $23,000 last year. Our United Way match was a little over 58. The Greater Economic Development contribution was $25,000. Salvation Army Customer Assistance was at $52,750. Just as a reminder, those funds are used to help those that are struggling to pay their bill, and they're vetted through the Salvation Army, but those funds are provided by OMU. In addition, there are some provided from the community, but I've included OMU's dollars in here. The gift certificate donations, I just like to mention that because sometimes we do participate in donating those to organizations in the community that are having raffles and that sort of thing. Telecommunication services in the community that we provide, and also special event assistance and those sorts of things. And Tim can talk about that more in depth, but that's connections at festivals, water lines, barbecue festivals, lots of things. I think that's all in your list. So that gives you the grand total. The budget is going to be based upon that. The $22,000 is a little bit low, lower than last year. And when I looked into that, it's because we have not received several contribution requests that we normally receive. So the budget will be based upon an aggregate of several years to kind of get an opportunity to look at that. Several had submitted earlier one year and later the next, so it's just a matter of timing. One thing I think is probably the most prevalent thing that you see in our community are our people and the things that they do there. In the last year, OMU has launched a volunteer team, and it truly is a volunteer team. They volunteer their time outside of hours and do a number of projects in our community. They've done some since I created this slide, but as you can see, they're involved. And then we have departmental projects. It's a great opportunity for our employees to get together and support our community in some way. And I've listed, and I'm sure I've left some out, that's easy to do, but we try to touch all of the organizations in our community. Local people, local service, and I think that's the epitome here. Certainly, that's something that's a rich OMU history. And that's the conclusion of my summary, but if you certainly have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I have questions every year about how do we determine those who receive funds. We do require a request in writing. They have to be a qualifying nonprofit, cannot be of a political or a religious nature, and we don't do individual, for instance, ball members. We would do teams and that sort of thing, and certainly need to be within Davis County.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate the generosity of our employees, and these are all very worthwhile, good organizations, but y'all know, as long as I've been on the commission, I do not believe it's right for us to be giving away ratepayers' money. The ratepayers have a right to decide which charity they want to donate to. But that being said, that's not what we're here for. I do have a question about EDC. I thought that we had agreed to budget $25,000, but we were later going to determine how much we were going to give them. When
That
does
is,
come?
right.
That is due in March, this month.
Okay.
What I would propose is we budget 25,000. I think I assume their budget includes that, because that's been our past 3 or 4 years. That was our giving. It went up from 10 to 15 to 25. I would propose that for this current year, we contribute at the $15,000 level, and then we budget and contribute next year at the $10,000 level, back to where we were before, and where most other organizations are at a $6,000 or a $10,000 level.
In addition to the telecom services, we use them as well.
That would just be our cash contribution, our investment, I think is what they call it.
So you're gonna come back with a memo recommending that at some point, or how you saying that?
Yeah, no, we will include it in the budget, and then when you approve the budget, that will fix that number.
Tony, the number that you saw up there is for the calendar year last year. It's not for this current fiscal year.
Okay, that's what.
And
That's
then
your
for the
answer.
other donations, we would propose to budget, like as we have in the past, at those same relative levels of the United Way match, and not really change anything materially on that, unless we get guidance from you guys to do something different. We'll be happy to do what you want.
Make sure I understand what you just said. For this
I'm not trying to
budget year 2020, when you mentioned 25,000 for, or you see, and then you mentioned 15,000, then you mentioned 10,000. It sounded almost like you were saying 25,000 for this coming year, and then 15 for the next year, and 10 for the next.
15 for the year that we're in. Even though, when we budgeted 25, we knew you had concerns with that level.
Right.
So I would say we kind of ramped down, so 15 for this year.
Okay.
And then, which is already budgeted 25, and then for the budget we're doing for fiscal 20, 10,000 and beyond.
Yeah, because remind me, how much is the county giving to EDC?
The county and the city, they are both above 100,000. They're the primary
The
sponsor.
county
of
is
EDC.
also, I thought they were less than what the city was.
I don't know if they're equal, but they're both up in the similar
Yeah.
order of magnitude.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact numbers.
The thing with the United Way, of course, I've voiced this before, but if I was an employee of, I guess I am to one extent, but if I was an employee of OMU, and OMU's commission directed me, says that the only top level best matching that OMU would match would be United Way, is there not a way to assemble a group of these where the employee could pick, say, well, if I give this, then OMU will match that, instead of just directing it solely at the United Way?
I think that can be done. I think the difficulty for us would be administering and managing that with all the different,
Well, I'm not saying a
Things.
slew of them, I'm saying maybe three,
so you would limit to, you can pick from these 3, United Way or 2 others.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Rather than just United Way, if you have a really problem with United Way, you can still be able to get the benefit of a match from OMU through a donation as an employee. Just something to think about.
We could certainly look at that. Again, making sure it's administered, because United Way is easy to administer because it all goes through, and we know exactly what the numbers are. And now we'd have to have each employee pick, one of the choices, but
I mean, I'm just.
I don't administer that, so.
One thing during the United Way campaign, I'll let you know, for example, I'll just disclose what I do. My money goes to the senior center, so it's facilitated by the United Way, but I get to choose the agencies, and they have, a list of 20 or 30 agencies in the Davis County area you can give to.
Because United Way has some unusual rules, month blackout thing, which is, you know, it's,
And I will tell you, a lot of our contribution requests come from organizations that employees are involved in. And I always like that because I know that we're putting money where they're involved. For instance, if they're involved in a little league organization, they'll notify us and send that request through. So there is some of that. I did want to make sure, and they're probably our largest facilitator of those requests.
But we only match United Way.
Right.
You have to be real careful matching other organizations if it wasn't something that had affected Davis County and locally. I mean, if you
Right.
give it
that
to
was my thought exactly.
University of Evansville, for instance, you really wouldn't want to, you know.
Give it United Way, you don't know if it's all gonna go
Match that.
local anyway.
Yeah, and that's why when I do it, and I think most of our employees do, I'm kind of speaking for them, but and there when they sign up, you can pick the agency, and I pick local agencies.
Ken, if we're gonna do a match, and they do a United Way match, that there's a list of United Way agencies locally that money will go to, so at least our ratepayers' money is going to a local cause.
Yeah, yeah. It also has, like you said, it stays within the county. So
It has
we
a-
could say only the funds that are selected of an agency that's in Davis County will match those, if you'd like to, and I bet everybody's gonna check one of those boxes.
I'd be much more comfortable with that than sitting at national organizations coming in.
Whatever they want.
That is an option on
So we can definitely do it that way. And so the match will be for those in county.
In county. And then we'll work with our employees to let them know that, so they can check in county.
In
if
our
they want
United
to.
Way campaign, we will, make sure we talk about that.
And then that is in line with all of our other contributions, so they have to be in Davis County.
I like that now.
See, Owensboro.
That gets a little messy for us.
I'd like to reiterate one other thing that Sonia said, is that if you don't ask us for money, you're not gonna get any. Basically, because I've had people in the community say, how come so-and-so got money from OMU for something? I said, well, all you gotta do is ask. Oh, you have to ask? Yeah, so.
Yeah, we don't stand on the street corner. Sonia didn't stand out in the corner with a sign.
I don't
"Need
send
a
letters
donation
saying,
today."
and we do get that question a lot, why did you sponsor this? Well, lots of times it's because we just haven't heard from them. We do have a limited budget and a pot of money for that, obviously, that you are looking to approve. But certainly, we do have to have that written request, but we'll walk them through that process if they have a question.
I asked Sonia, looking at the list of people that, or organizations that Berkshire College and Owensboro Community College both got a nice donation from us, but Wesleyan didn't. And she said, well, Wesleyan hasn't asked yet. But usually they do get one, but this year they have not turned in their request. So it is important that the community know through the media that if you want something, then just that you gotta turn in a formal request.
Right. And one of the things I did mention, and if you'll look through that, the listing that I provided, is that, a lot of our donations are very small. You have a lot of $200, $250, and those sorts of things. So we're able to, participate in some smaller organizations and make a difference there as well.
So we will proceed with those guidances in mind, and that's what we will include in our budget process to bring back to you in May.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. That's where you were headed, right?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor say aye.
But I wasn't getting there quick enough for you.
No, I'm
I
getting
understand.
low.
We do have just a brief update on where we are on budget with some preliminary budget information and our assumption review. Jason, you take that. So Jason Potts will walk us through that. This will be brief, I believe.
You will now, won't it?
Kevin said it's gonna be brief twice, so I think that's my cue. So, I want to walk you through a few key assumptions that go into our budget. You've already provided input on some of the big ones, the general increase, the base rates, the defeasance and bonds, and the ECA rate. But these are some of the other ones that go in there. As a reminder, we'll be back May 2nd with the results of all this for your approval of the fiscal 20 budget. Most of the numbers I'm going to talk about will be comparing fiscal 20's budget to fiscal 19's budget. So
stop me if you have any questions. Again, we're trying to show you some of the assumptions, get your input on it, and let me know what you want to discuss in more detail. So starting with the consolidated electric system, and within that Elmer Smith station, the key assumptions are Unit 1 shutting down about May 31 of this year. Generation down about 26% as a result of that. And fuel expense down about that same percentage as we would expect. The last planned outage on either ESS unit is actually planned for April of this year. So fiscal 2020 does not have any planned outages budgeted. Unit 2 shutting down about a year after Unit 1. Looking at wholesale power marketing, a lot of what you see in wholesale is a result of what's going on with ESS. So as expected, the energy sales are down about 30%. Revenue is down. Revenue from those energy sales is down about 27%. Again, because of the loss of the length of Unit 1. Bright spot, our projected prices that we're going to use from the wholesale market are up about 5% on a dollars per megawatt hour basis. Retail electric, again, more of the story of shutting down Unit 1. Our total sales are projected to go up slightly, about 0.5%. The retail purchases from ESS are down about 12%. Again, we don't have Unit 1 there to rely on. And so we're making that up with purchases from the wholesale market to supply our city load. Switching over to the water system. The water system's in pretty good shape after the rate increases that were approved last year. The first phase of the retail rate increase went into effect October 1, 2018. The second phase is going into effect June 1 of 2019. And then the wholesale water districts have a rate adjustment as well, based on recovering the cost of the cabin plant expansion debt service. We do anticipate that the sales will go up about 0.5% for our customers, a small increase, and about a 2% increase for wholesale customers. Back on the consolidated electric system, I saved this one for last. It's a big assumption, and you've already seen part of it, but we do anticipate using a significant amount of reserves during fiscal year 2020. The good news is we have the reserves to use. The reasons that we keep reserves around are because of our exposure to the power market. That's winding down, and our exposure to unexpected costs at Elmer Smith Station. Those are winding down as well. And so we do have the reserves to use for these purposes, and that helps us mitigate any further rate increases. So the two big uses of reserves are the bond defeasance and refunding, 2 steps. You just took action on the first step, the 2019 step, and then the larger one in fiscal 20. We budgeted both of those. And then the fiber to the home system build out. A couple of years ago, we came to you, you approved bonds to build out the next phase of the residential fiber system. That money is anticipated to run out somewhere in the middle of fiscal year 2020. And when it does, what we're budgeting is that we will use reserves to build it out going forward. And so you all would be able to approve that as we go. Honestly, it saves money to not borrow externally. It saves the interest cost, it saves the borrowing cost, and it also gives us more flexibility. So we can approve the use of cash rather than tying ourselves to bonds and putting that money in the bank and basically having it there that we have to spend on fiber to the home. So that is in our budget currently. And Kevin said brief, so that's brief.
Good job. Where are you predicting that wholesale market costs are going to go up 5%? Is it a lack of is more demand or a lack of energy out there with all the coal plants shutting down around the country, or what? What led to that 5%?
There's numerous things that go into it. You're probably right that there's a little bit of shrinking of margins, of supply margins that are causing the price to go up. But we haven't dug real deep into the details of all the reasons behind the 5% increase.
But that's sort of a feeling across the board in all utilities around the country?
Anybody who sells in the MISO and PJM.
Yeah, that's the MISO and PJM markets. One of the things that may be driving that a little bit is natural gas. This time last year was lower than it's projected now. Natural gas hasn't gone up tremendously, but has gone up a bit. So that may be part of that. The market's looking forward and saying natural gas is a little bit higher, so we'll take that into account. But one thing that Jason mentioned that I think is a benefit of, as we move, the plan that we've got as we move out of Elmer Smith, is that we're going to continue the fiber to the home build out on schedule without having to go for that next bond issuance. So we're not have to go to the bond market, not to pay the interest. We have the funds available, so we'll keep that project moving on schedule, but not having to go back to the bond market. So I think that's a good thing.
And Chris is comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great plan.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Mack.
Speaking of Chris, he's going to give us his quarterly update.
Brief, right? Brief.
As brief as you can.
Brief as that can be. I have to get up. I don't know, for some reason with this portion of it, I have to do my weather personality here. But really, again, the focus is these last 3 months over here. You can see that we have continued to add enterprise level commercial customers. The green line is a very important line because that's the cumulative amount. You can see that it's at its highest point throughout history. So that's still a very good thing. We're adding some of those large commercial customers. The red has declined a little bit. Churn is still largely due to people just going out of business. Their business plans have changed, whatever it is, they're consolidating locations. So I'm still very proud of the fact that churn is more related to their own business operations and needs versus something that we may have not been able to deliver on for them. Questions on this slide? Okay, this is the overall bandwidth. The commission did approve that we double the bandwidth. That's not represented on this slide here. And actually what I propose is that unless the commission really wants to see this information, I would like to replace this slide with the small business information and no longer present this particular piece of it. It's up to you though, of course. But really all this is saying is this is the committed bandwidth that we have out there. This big jump over here was that very large commercial customer with the 500 by 500 circuit that we added. Commercial voice. So we did have a customer change how they were going to handle their voice services, so that's the reason for that disconnect there. And again, it was sort of reorganizing how they did business. It wasn't so much that they weren't happy with our service or anything. And then we have had very little disconnect activity on the voice side. I personally think that the small business initiative will help to start to drive even more voice customers though, because we will be offering our voice services along with that as well. So for a business, it's kind of a logical thing that if I can provide internet and phone services for a very reasonable price, why not get them from both? And there's our residential internet growth, and you can see it's still ramping up quite a bit. We have not opened up the new segment. I'll see that in the next slide. We haven't opened up that new segment yet. It was originally anticipated to be sort of the middle to the end of this month. It's now looking more like it'll be next month before we start to roll forward with that, which is an additional 3,100 subscribers. But nice and steady. And here again, the churn is mostly related to people just moving out of the service area. They're in a current service area, they've acquired a different home, so they're moving out. And it's been very low. You can see it's only been about 3, 4, here, there. Here's the sub-E segment that I was talking about. This is what's planned to be released here very shortly. And we will start to just roll through that area. All those pre-subscribers, we'll contact them and start to get them scheduled here soon. And then for next fiscal year, we're hoping to use budget for the sub-C section, sort of the center of Owensboro, and that would be another 3,800 potential homes that we would be able to service. And I think that's, here's penetration rates so you can see how we're doing. The phase 1, which was our original area that we deployed services to, we're at 30% penetration there. Phase 2, when we expanded that area, we're at about 16% there. Phase 3, which is when we finally expanded this NOC segment, which still hasn't even been out for about a full year yet, we're up to about 9%. So total all, we're at about 13% for any area that we serve right now. I think that's it. Yeah. Questions? Thank you.
Okay, short, a brief general manager highlights. February was a warmer than normal month, about 2 degrees in Owensboro. Consequently, city load was about 6.6% below budget for the month. And the third straight month that city megawatt hour sales were below budget, and really all that's attributed to 3 months of warmer